This is the Bolder Than Most podcast, where we talk with those making bold moves in business, real estate, and life. I'm your host, Trey Jacobs. Thank you for being here. Let's jump right in. All right, guys, welcome back to the Bolder Than Most podcast. I am your host, Trey Jacobs, and today I got my boy, Gideon Spencer. Honestly, Gideon, I don't even know how to introduce you, bro. You do so much. So if you could you introduce yourself to the listeners?
Yeah, of course. So I buy and add value to boutique hotels. We just closed on one a couple weeks ago, which we can chat about. And my background is in engineering, and then I ended up in tech. So I've gotten to work in tech for a decade, building a lot of really cool apps and products and launching them, and took a lot of those lessons and applied them to boutique hotels, which is a lot of fun and something that we could dive into. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
I mean, that's super light. Okay, let me add up onto that, right? So you got the boutique hotels. You do the tech stuff, which is super interesting. I'm in tech as well. You have a quad unit in San Antonio, I believe. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. You also are the host of the Hunt for Incredible podcast, correct? How many episodes do you guys got?
Oh, maybe like 25, 30 now.
Oh yeah, bro. Congratulations. That's a huge milestone.
Thank you. Yeah,
man. And you live a lifestyle that most people only dream of, in the sense that you primarily live in Airbnbs right now. So, I mean, a little bit more, but golly, guys, like, where do I even start, man? Why don't we start at the top, bro? What came first? The quad? Was it the quads? The quad unit?
It was. Yeah. So the way that I got into real estate, and this was a few years ago, was my wife and I were both from San Antonio, Texas, and we spend a lot of time traveling around. So I'm in tech, I work remotely. She also works remote. And before having kids, we decided to go see some things. So we spent about 6 months living out of a car, just hopping around different Airbnbs, visiting friends and family and just interesting places across the US. We decided that we really enjoyed it, and so we wanted to keep it going. And part of that being gone all the time was we wanted a place to crash when we visited family. So we decided to get a property in San Antonio so we'd have a place to stay when we visited. And we always knew that, of course, real estate was a wise investment for a handful of reasons. You have appreciation, depreciation, cash flow, and a whole bunch of other great things, tax benefits. And so we set the goal of buying 4 units over the course of a year. And as we got into it, this was like the peak of real estate being a hot market, with interest rates being 2.5%, 3%. It had been on fire for a long time. This space was incredibly competitive. And it was really difficult to get in. And by all the metrics, it was a terrible time to get in. And I knew that it was not a great time to get in. But with my mentality, I thought to myself, if I can get in and make it work during the worst times, then I can just crush it during the best times. And so we were looking for properties, looking for good deals. I realized it was a lot more difficult to buy 4 properties over the course of the year than I had originally thought. Like a month in, I realized this is actually really competitive. It's a really aggressive market. San Antonio, Texas at the time was on fire, as were a lot of other places. And so I decided to just buy a fourplex, because I thought, okay, my goal is to get 4 doors by the end of the year. It seems much more effective to just get 4 doors under one roof. So we pivoted, made that adjustment to our strategy, ended up buying the fourplex, moving into the first unit, fixed it up, furnished it, put it on Airbnb. We ended up converting all of them to short-term rentals, moved into the second unit, fixed it up ourselves, continued the process. In terms of applying my background to tech, we focused really heavily on the experience. So how do people feel when they walk in? What vibe do we want to give? And then also treating it like what's called a sandbox, or an environment that we can test as many things at a time to accelerate our learning as quickly as possible. So we experimented with different styles of the units being on Airbnb, different phrasing on the presentation to see what would perform better. So a lot of A/B testing with making sure that the property was performing well and optimizing for it. We also experimented with short-term rentals versus mid-term rentals. We never committed to long-term rentals because we saw the numbers, and that's a very straightforward model. So we wanted to experiment and create really tight feedback loops is what it's called, where you basically have very small units of testing so that you can test more rapidly and get more tests in more frequently and iterate more rapidly. So we were moving around. We also experimented with renovating ourselves because my wife and I, we didn't have a strong renovation background. My parents did some real estate stuff growing up, so I was roughly familiar with it. I was familiar with how the numbers work because I ripped through 12 books within the first 4 months of deciding to get into real estate. But in terms of renovating the property, yeah, starting off with renovations to get familiar and to make sure that we wouldn't get ripped off, right? So we wanted to make sure that if we hired a contractor, that we're familiar with what they're doing and what they're communicating, and that their price is reasonable. And then we also experimented with subcontracting it out for one of the units, and then we experimented with hiring a general contractor. So basically just fitting as much learning into this unit or into this fourplex as possible to make sure that we got the most learning. Because I mean, realistically, I think a lot of people, they focus heavily on how can I make this as financially profitable right out the gate as possible. But we were in it for the long play. So we were in it to learn as much as possible, knowing that that broad spectrum of experiences with this property would help us really nail down the niche that we were going for. So after all this trial and error and experimentation, we effectively landed on running the fourplex like a small boutique hotel. So managing everything remotely, but having everything under one roof and finding those benefits there. And so after that, we decided to scale our portfolio, leveraging the same concept as before, which is, you know, getting as many doors under one roof as is reasonable, and a property that can be managed with a staff light model. Maybe it doesn't need to be entirely remote, but a staff light model and something that checks off a lot of the boxes based on our experiences and learning so far. So that led us to buying a boutique hotel, which we closed on just a couple weeks ago.
Hey guys, my company, Paige Capital Group, is actively sourcing and buying multifamily deals. If you're looking to put your money to work, gain some tax efficiencies, and grow your portfolio while we do all the heavy lifting, go to paigecapitalgroup.com/invest. That's Paige, Paige, capitalgroup.com/invest, and someone from our team will reach out. Now, back to the show. That's dope, bro. That's so dope. That's so dope. So, all right. So with the fourplex, right? Your big takeaway that you were going to run it kind of like the boutique hotel. What were some of your other big takeaways after doing all that testing?
Some other big takeaways. Well, I'll share a big takeaway about the fourplex that also ended up being a massive takeaway with the hotel, which is leveraging other people who are experts in those fields and not doing everything on your own. So we went in there, we experimented with renovating ourselves and just to get that lesson in, but very quickly graduated to outsourcing that. We also didn't have the capital. We were not very capital heavy at the time because we'd made some other investments. We were not very capitalized. And so we ended up finding an investor who was interested in investing in real estate, but didn't have the experience. And we ended up structuring the deal such that it was very advantageous for him to invest with us because it was our first deal, right? So we wanted to make sure that it was a grand slam for him. And yeah, just leveraging other people who are skilled and aligning incentives such that players want to get involved because it's structured in a way, it's incentivized in a way where it wins for them.
Yeah. Yeah. What does the financing look on a fourplex? What does that look like? What's that process?
So the financing that we ended up doing was we raised capital. So we bought, I'll just be explicit with the numbers. It was a $520,000 fourplex in the best part of San Antonio. And
it's a great deal.
Yeah, and it's in a killer spot of San Antonio. And the only reason that we got the deal actually was because we ended up making a connection with somebody who knew the seller. And so we had access to the property before it ever hit the MLS. And so we were very quick to put in the offer. It ended up getting accepted. And there were, I think, 6 or 7 backup offers that came flooding in right behind us. And so it was really just like first mover advantage to get that property. But in terms of the financing, so we ended up putting 20% down, which was a little bit frustrating because we did want to be more leveraged and leverage some of the, like, we wanted to go with an FHA loan at first that we could put less down and then have more capital for the renovations because it was a rougher property that needed some work. But then because it had window units, this property was super old and it's in an area that's more recently become gentrified. And so it had window units and some other things that didn't pass for FHA. So we ended up going conventional, putting 20% down, and just getting a conventional loan and actually claiming it as our primary residence so that we would get some of those additional tax benefits.
Wait, so it was your primary residence and you still had to put 20% down?
Yeah. Yeah, because
That
it was a
sucks.
fourplex.
Huh.
Yeah.
So that new FHA program that they just rolled out, would you have even been able to qualify for the 3.5% down?
So we would have qualified. I don't know about the new FHA program. We would have qualified for Fannie Mae's new 5% down for multifamilies.
Fannie Mae, yeah, that's it. My bad.
Yeah. So that one,
man,
we would have qualified. Yeah, we just missed it. But honestly, I don't really care because it got us in the game when it did. And so, I mean, I'm just thankful, and it's a highly profitable property right now. Like, it is absolutely crushing, and I mean, it's like that first deal is the most important deal because it gets you in the game.
Yeah, dude, and it's that, man. Like, so this house that I'm sitting in right now is eventually going to be a rental, but it's just one house. We're in the process of building out in the suburbs of Dallas, and I'm excited just so I can say that, you know what, I now have a rental property. I have the hotel conversion going on in Overland Park, but I own this much of it, so
yeah.
Dude, congratulations, that's dope. And 520 in the best part of San Antonio, bro, that thing must have appreciated like crazy. Holy cow,
dude. Yeah, so we bought it. It was actually just under 2 years ago. And yeah, it's probably appreciated, not including the renovations, probably about like 15% so far. After you add the renovations, it's probably pretty significant. I mean, we did lighter renovations. We didn't get too crazy in it. We mostly did just cosmetic renovations, and then there were some weird plumbing issues that we fixed. But yeah, I'd probably say 20 to 30% appreciation so far, and we're waiting for interest rates to go back down before we refinance. But we're hoping that we'll be able to line our pockets pretty well with that.
That's what's up, bro. Are they all 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms?
Yeah, they're all 1 bed, 1 bath, and they're all clones of each other, which made testing a lot of fun because we would do what's called in tech split testing, where you basically you market or you test something 2 different ways. So, but if you you want to change as few variables as possible so that you're exclusively testing the variable that's changed. So we had these layouts that were identical, and we got to test, okay, if the rooms are 2 different themes, which theme does better? Or if the rooms are similarly themed and we, label them differently, or we use different types of titles, or the descriptions are different, then like which one actually performs better? And that ended up helping us optimize pretty significantly.
Which theme won out? Which was the most popular theme?
The theme that won out was the most vibrant one. So it being in San Antonio, Fiesta is a big deal every year. It's like this big festival that happens, and we have a Fiesta themed room, which is just like tons of bright Fiesta colors, but we kept it classier. It's not just like getting punched in the face by a rainbow. My wife worked on the design, and she did a killer job. But it's very vivacious. It's full of life, and it's a super killer room, and that one's been crushing.
Is that the one? I remember you posted one of the rooms a few months back on your Instagram. Was that the room?
Yeah, that was it.
Dude, I think I even commented. I was like, bro, that looks great, right? Like,
yeah. No, it's a solid one. It's a solid one.
Yeah.
Also, surprisingly, or not surprisingly, our property is right next to a military base. And so when we experimented with the midterm rentals, they didn't cash flow as hard, but relative to the effort to operate somebody who's staying there for 1 to 6 months, we've had people stay between 1 and 6 months on average. Those do really, really well too. And for those, the style of the rooms tend to be like more homely, more cozy. People who are staying for prolonged periods of time, they're not looking for as vibrant. They're looking for something that feels like home. That's a bit more
A
mild.
little more
So we
peace.
noticed that, yeah, the vibrant, vivacious vibe tends to do better for short-term rentals, and then midterm rentals, the cozier, warmer vibes tend to do better. So that's how we have them split up right now.
What's your average stay?
The average stay in the summer, I want to say, is about 3 days. And then in the winter, we convert to midterm rentals. So basically, our strategy is in the summer, we're short-term rentals because that's the hot season. That's when there's a lot of, there are different festivals and games going on. There's a strong draw to the area. So short-term rentals crush in the summer. And then in the winter, we pivot to midterm rentals and find that those do really well. And I'd say for midterm rentals, the average stay is probably about a month and a half, but it really varies anywhere from 1 month to 3 months. We'll get people between 1 and 6 months, but I would say on average, the most frequent. Because we keep one unit, we lean pretty heavily towards midterm rentals just to balance out some of our risk. And because it performs well year round, but we find that optimizes our pricing the best when we do short-term rentals in the summer, and then we pivot to midterm rentals in the winter.
Nice. So average for the year across all 4 units, is that above or below 7 days?
Oh, average across the whole year? It's for sure less than 7 days.
So you guys are taking what is that Airbnb tax loophole? It's not a loophole, but
yeah.
How does that work? Is it worth it? Yeah. Man, that's why I want that. Offset the active income.
No, that is super worth it. It's super worth it. Yeah. So we ended up leveraging that because that offset my W-2. I still have a W-2 in tech.
Yeah. Do me a favor, can you explain what the tax code is, just for those who may not be as familiar with it?
Yeah, so basically what the tax code is if you own a short-term rental, or it has to meet certain criteria. So the average days that a guest stays on your property has to be less than 7. You also have to invest, I believe, it's a minimum of 100 hours or something like that, 150 hours. I don't know. We blew it out of the water, so I don't remember exactly what the specific number is. Then you can actually claim the losses against your W-2, which is huge because typically in real estate, if you make an investment, if it is active income or passive income, then you cannot claim it against your W-2. But and I'm not a CPA or tax advisor, so definitely speak to your own on this topic, because that's what I hired him for. His name's Patrick. He's fantastic. I just let him tell me what to do. Shout out to Patrick. I just let him tell me what to do. But yeah, that STR loophole, which, like you said, it's not a loophole, is you can claim the losses against your W-2. So there are massive savings there. Another huge area for savings that not a lot of people talk about is cost segregation studies. So with a cost segregation study, you can effectively accelerate the depreciation of your asset. So you can either do bonus depreciation, where you claim a massive chunk of depreciation up front, or you can break the depreciation out over multiple years. The strategy that we ended up going with, that our advisor suggested would maximize our gains, was over a 5-year period, and the returns were huge. So even on our property, $520,000 property, we got about $20,000 back our first year for accelerating the depreciation with the cost segregation study. And over the next few years, we'll probably get another $15,000 back or so just from accelerating that depreciation. And the cost segregation study only costs like $2,500. So you pay $2,500, then you get 20 grand the first year, and then 15 grand over the following years. It's a massive return, and not a lot of people know about it.
Real estate is a cheat code, bro. Like, seriously, I'm like, even just turning this house. What I'm trying to figure out, though, and, I know you're not a tax professional, but like, if I bought this house for, I'm just going to give you a number, like 300,000, right? But when I leave the house, it's worth 600. Can I depreciate over the 27 and a half years, the 300 or the 600?
So you depreciate based on the value of the structure. So you'd have to break it down.
Okay.
You'd have to break it down and say, okay, because the land doesn't depreciate. The land only appreciates. But the idea is that the structure on the land does depreciate because there's wear and tear, and time just does its thing on any structure, which is breaking it down. And so the idea is that you can claim depreciation on that structure that is depreciating in value, even though the land is appreciating. So it depends on the area. More popular areas, the land might be worth 50% of the value of the property. In less popular areas, the land might be worth only 20% of the value of the property. So it really just depends. But that's what the depreciation is claimed against, is that structure.
I live in the hood, bro. So you couldn't. No, I'm just kidding. But I do live in the hood, actually. Oh man, that's dope though. Like seriously, the tax, man.
Well, that actually works out better for depreciation than for you, because
the structure.
Yeah, if the structure is
what's
the majority
of it
value, then yeah.
Exactly. So I was like just playing it out in my head, right? Like how I could try to offset some of my active income with real estate losses, right? I can't do it. There's just no way I can work around having a W-2, even if I have a rental. It would have to be the short term. I'm just not there yet. But
I don't know if that's actually the case. So again, I'm not a tax professional, but I learned about this just the other day. If you are investing more than 500 hours, which is like a couple hours a day, if you're investing 500 hours or more with anybody's business, if anybody has a side hustle, whether it's real estate or something else, if you invest 500 hours or more, then it qualifies as something that you can claim those losses against your W-2. I'm pretty sure. Like, I just learned about this the other day because I was actually talking to Carlton, the tax strategist, on Instagram.
Oh, really?
He was on a group call that I was on, and he was sharing that, and I was like, dude, that's gold. Amanda Hahn, I was on a call with her as well, and she brought that up also. So it's just like, dude, there's so many little benefits that, I mean, real estate makes it easier, right? Because if you have like the STR loophole, for example, then you don't need 500 hours, so it's more beneficial there. But even without it, just understanding those tax laws and where you can actually get that return, it's huge, because the most money you'll ever pay, the biggest bills you will ever pay in your life are in taxes. So being able to cut those down yields massive gains.
Yeah, especially here in Texas, man. Property taxes are freaking brutal,
dude. Outrageous. Yeah, it is outrageous.
It's crazy. This new house that we're building out in McKinney, the property taxes monthly are like $1,100. That's just property taxes, right? Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
That's why I'm excited to figure out how to get this house rented out and get that income coming in, and then how to like not pay taxes on that, right? But that's stuff. Which call were you at where Carlton Dennis showed up?
Yeah, so it was I'm in Rich Summers Boutique Hotel Mastermind.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Yeah, he's had a bunch of great people. That's actually what Amanda Hahn was on as well. Carlton was on there. Brittany, investor girl Britt, she's now like somewhat affiliated, so she'll hop on calls. We went to the Cabo retreat and got to hang out with them. So yeah, that's another huge hack, is masterminds that have high caliber people that show up, and then you get to chat with these people that there's no way you would get a chance to talk to them. It's not like I'm famous. I don't want it to sound like I'm bragging. I hang out with Amanda Hahn and Carlton. No, that's not the case. It's literally just becoming affiliated with a group that brings high caliber people there, and then gives you crazy opportunities to chat with them.
Bro, you are famous though. You were on Rich's podcast. Shout out to Rich. I love that guy.
Shout out to Rich. Yeah, he's a solid dude for sure.
I actually met him in Florida. We had talked on the phone, and he actually introduced us a couple months ago, I think.
That's right. Yeah.
He did. Yeah. Love Rich. Everything that he's doing, his podcast and everything.
He's totally killing it.
How's this? Yeah, dude, that freaking G-Wagon, let me just buy a G-Wagon so I can pay less in taxes. That's the lifestyle that I want to live, man. Shit.
Yeah. Hey, you'll get there, bro. You'll get there.
We're working on it, you know. How is his mastermind though? It sounds like, I mean, from the outside looking in, you guys are fucking getting it.
Yeah, no, it's solid. It's solid. So it is the only mastermind that I've been in, but the structure, and I've spoken to people who are in other masterminds, the structure is really, really effective. So we meet 2 times a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Tuesdays, he brings high caliber people in, so like Amanda Hahn, Carlton Dennis. And then on Thursdays, we underwrite deals. So deals that people in the group have found, they'll bring it in. And then the whole group will go over the deals together and we'll analyze it, ask questions, try to poke holes in it, offer suggestions, or bring up strategies. And so it's really effective. It's really effective. It's also great because when you see other people making progress and win, it motivates you and compels you to win. It's like there's
Yeah.
that study, you are the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. It's actually worse than that. What it is they did the actual study on this. What it is you fall to the lowest common denominator in the group. So they did a study, I think it was something like there were treadmills. They had these workstations and they had people who were able to get on the treadmill, one of those walking desks. And what they found was it was the person who was least active that ended up bringing down the average and compelling other people to be less active. It wasn't that people
Wow.
ended up walking or exerting themselves or investing the time as the average. So it's actually a pretty terrifying study. So with this, in terms of developing yourself and surrounding yourself with people, it's finding the people who not only on average are high caliber, but making sure that the lowest common denominator of that group is still somebody who's high caliber and who's going to raise you up. And that's what these calls are. That's what involving yourself with high caliber people looks like, because when you see other people who are motivated and looking for deals and crushing it and posting content and doing all the stuff that you're doing, hopping on podcasts, working with hotel renovations, it motivates you and compels you and lights a fire up under your butt, because you don't want to be the person that shows up every week and doesn't have anything, because you know other people are showing up with stuff, so you feel like you need to deliver, and it really lights a fire under your ass.
Yeah, bro. Like just that fired me up right there, man. I want to join the mastermind. I was gonna join this year, but then we accidentally bought this house. So now I gotta kind of like, I'm not even joking. We were like, we go look at the houses, the model homes in the suburbs, just to be like, oh, we can wait, whatever. And then we ended up signing. Yeah, it's fucking crazy. But yeah, shout out to Rich, man. Everything he's put together, the guy's class act, and I love to see him winning for sure.
Yeah, man, he's
Let's
killing
dive
it.
into your hotel that you just closed on, man. So I kind of want to start from the beginning, bro. Like, how did you find the deal? Where is the deal? What are the baseline numbers and so on?
Yeah, so the deal is located in Solvang. The deal's located in Solvang, California. So it's in central California wine country. It's about
Okay.
45 minutes away from Santa Barbara, roughly 2 hours away from Los Angeles. And so I'll start off with the market. So I'll go through what we like about the deal, some details about the deal, and then we can dive into how we found it specifically. So it's in what's called a regional destination market, which is effectively like a secondary market that's near a major metro. We like these markets because we find that they're recession resistant. The data shows it. You can look back through 2008, and we actually did that for this deal. We looked back about 35 years and saw strong market fundamentals, consistent growth. But back to the secondary market, these regional destination markets, what we find is that when there are economic hard times or there's a recession, people don't stop traveling. They simply change their travel habits. So rather than going to Europe for a week, they might go to this destination market a couple hours away, or they'll go to Solvang, Central California wine country, and enjoy themselves for the weekend. So that's the market that we like. In terms of this property itself, the seller was looking for a quick exit. So it was managed by a 90-year-old lady. It was owned by her son-in-law, but it was managed by a 90-year-old lady who was looking to retire. And so she and her son-in-law were not that interested in making a ton of money. They were very reasonable when we were going through negotiations. They were more focused on just getting rid of the deal. And so we structured the deal and we negotiated in a way where everybody felt like they won, to where she felt like she was taken care of. We actually bought a duplex with the hotel. So we bought a 24-unit hotel and we bought the duplex. And not only did the deal make sense numbers wise for the asset itself and the value that we felt we could add, but the financing structure was amazing as well. So I'll dive into that in a second, because we did seller financing, we did subject to, We got private lending. We did the whole gambit, man. And then we also raised capital on top of that. So back to the sandbox idea. Part of why I love this deal so much is we experimented and executed on so many different types of financing, which compressed so much learning there. But back to the property itself. So the value that we saw, so we invest, we do value adds. We don't buy and hold. I mean, we are going to hold the property for a while, but our big focus is to add value to these assets. And there was a lot of upside from the operation that we could implement as well. Like I mentioned, it was managed by a 90-year-old lady. She's super nice. But the property was run the way you would imagine a 90-year-old would run it. She wasn't fully engaged. I'll tell you a quick story. My wife and I, when we showed up to do our due diligence, we went to the property a handful of times. When we first showed up at 10 o'clock at night, and we went to the front door of the office, and there was a handwritten sign with a phone number on it. So we called the phone number. We woke up a nice gentleman, and he basically told us that our key was around the side of the building. We walk around the side of the building, and on the side of the building, there's this envelope with our name on it, which we open up, and inside is a physical metal key to our room and a hand-drawn map. And it felt like a scavenger hunt. And scavenger hunts are cool, but not at 10 o'clock at night when you're trying to find your room. So it's just little things like that when we were doing our due diligence, that type of stuff got me super excited because I was like, oh man, there is so much upside for operational improvements that will come from like not even needing to swing a hammer, right? Like we literally we update the locks so that they don't take physical metal keys. We bring the property online because it didn't have a strong online presence. Really simple things like that. We are going to end up investing about $1 million into the renovations to make sure that we can clean up the property and add value, and we'll update furnishings and things like that. But overall, I mean, there's a ton of upside from just those operational inefficiencies that were going on with the property.
So how did you guys source the deal?
So we sourced the deal. I ended up partnering with a couple other people, absolutely fantastic guys. And we broke up, we basically divvied up different markets that we invested in. So two of my partners, they ended up investing heavily in the California coast. And then I invested a lot of my time in Colorado, and we just called brokers. We built relationships. We were sending out LOIs like crazy, which are letters of intent for anybody who doesn't know. Sending out LOIs like crazy. I was literally ripping LOIs out. Like I would set a goal. I was probably ripping out like 3 to 5 LOIs a week of just hitting people up, leveraging that to build rapport with brokers, because brokers, when you're building rapport with them, they want to see that you're actually making movement, that you're serious about buying these properties, and that you know what you're talking about, that you have the experience, because it's a very like cliquish space, right? Where brokers, they're not going to just send a deal to somebody who they're not confident can actually close, or they don't think can carry the ball across the finish line. So we ended up just building relationships with investors, ripping out LOIs, and this was a deal that my partner came across. And so he brought it to our attention. We analyzed it. We spent an outrageous amount of hours visiting the property, doing market research. We have memberships to CoStar, and so we pulled a bunch of data from CoStar, which was another source. We called other hotel owners in the area. We visited with other property owners in the area and got a better understanding of the numbers, what everything looked like. And that's how we effectively validated the upside potential to gain confidence that we could meet that upside potential. And so we pulled the trigger on it.
Real quick, guys, if you're enjoying this show and want to help us grow, share, shoot us a 5-star rating, and follow the show on Apple or Spotify. My goal is to continue to grow and get bigger and bigger guests on the show, to reach more like-minded real estate investors and help everyone be more bold and build more wealth. Now, back to the show. So when you're underwriting a hotel, right? Like I don't know if you're familiar with multifamily and how that is underwritten. I'm assuming it's fairly similar, except for the rent or the nightly rates, right? Like how do you account for that? How do you research that? And then how do you take that and add it into your underwriting?
Yeah, so it's very, very similar. They're effectively just two different data sets, but the meaning of the data is the same. So what I mean by that is with long-term rentals, apartment complexes, you have the T12s, right? The trailing 12s, and
Right.
those are based on like the rent roll. So like, what does the rent actually look like for these tenants? With boutique hotels, it is the ADR, or the average daily rate, and the occupancy. Because with those two numbers combined, you get something called the RevPAR, which is the revenue per available room, and that basically tells you the same thing for a short-term rental or for short-term lodging as what the rent roll tells you for long-term lodging.
That
So
sounds
virtually
so much
everything else
easier.
is the same.
Yeah, dude. Have you ever like gone through a rent roll for a 300 unit apartment complex?
Oh, I have not, but I can imagine it being a nightmare.
It sucks. It's not
Because you have to
fun.
validate every individual
So much
tenant, whereas
stuff.
with a boutique hotel, you just go through it and you know, okay, these guests aren't going to be here longer than a few days anyway, so we can focus on the asset itself rather than the quality of the tenant, if you can say that. I don't mean to say like more, some people are higher quality than others, but when it comes to paying bills, there are some bills that are more consistently paid than others, I guess you could say, independent of the individuals who are all fantastic. But yeah, no, that is an aspect that I do enjoy more than apartments, because that was actually what I was going to get into first. So when we
Yeah.
bought the fourplex, we were planning to make it a long-term rental. The only reason why we made it a short-term rental was because once we ran the numbers, and like I mentioned, we ran the numbers for short, medium, and long-term, the numbers just ripped. So we kind of just fell into it there. So we've never done a like gone through rent roll or anything like that, other than the fourplex that we ended up buying.
Yeah, man. So all right, so like in Dallas, right? Like we'll have like a typical occupancy for your A class, your C class, your B class apartment complexes. Do you have the same thing with like with the hotels, right? Like this market will typically be 50% occupied throughout the month, or how does that work?
We do. Yeah, we do. So different markets show different levels of strength. It's the same thing, right? You have like primary, secondary markets. Some people call them A and B markets, and C, etc. You also have A, B, and C properties. Um, we don't go based off of that. My group specifically doesn't go based off of that super heavily, just because different brokers will try to spin it different ways, where they'll pitch it as, you know, a higher quality asset than it actually is. So we don't pay a whole lot of attention to that. What we do pay close attention to are the market fundamentals. So is this market showing strength? How did this market perform during the last recession? And when I
Hmm.
say market fundamentals, I'm really talking about supply and demand. So what does the supply of this market look like? How many hotel rooms are there? Are there any restrictions on the supply? So we actually prefer left-leaning states because there tends to be much higher regulation in those states, which is different than long-term rentals. Long-term rentals, you want to invest in right-leaning states, because it tends to be more favorable to landlords, etc. But with boutique hotels specifically, we find it more advantageous to invest in left-leaning states because those higher regulations end up increasing the barrier of entry. And so we're
Right.
able to buy an asset with a higher confidence that we're not going to have competition coming in. So Solvang, for example, there was one pocket of one neighborhood that allowed short-term rentals, Airbnbs and VRBOs, etc. Outside of that, they're not allowed to. On top of that, Solvang is a smaller town that has a restricted amount of land. You can't do any vertical building, and there are all these other building regulations that effectively, when we looked at the data, and we pulled a lot of the data from CoStar, we pulled from the city, the county, we pulled from all over the place. What we saw was that the demand consistently grew, but the supply stayed relatively fixed. And so we looked at that data over the last 35 years, and when we projected forward into the future, we were very confident that that supply would stay relatively fixed while the demand would continue to grow, which, of course, the economics of supply and demand inherently means that the value and the prices of the asset that you're offering will go up.
Yeah. What's the business plan look like for this specific property?
So for this specific property, we bought it at a great rate. The financing, like I mentioned, we didn't spend a whole lot of time on that, but I said I'd bring it up, so I'll comment on it. We got seller financing for roughly 30% of the deal. For the duplex, because we bought a duplex and hotel together. For the duplex, about 50% of the value was subject to. So we took over a note that was at 3.99% fixed to the next 25 years, which you can't find anywhere else right now. The seller financing was at about 5%, or it is at 5% for the next couple of years, and then it steps up to 7% for a few years. So those rates are killer also. And then we also got private lending. So we raised capital for private money, which was about 50% of the hotel. And that was around 9.5% interest. And then the rest we raised. So we ended up raising about 20% of the down payment, or for the down payment, and then an additional 20% for renovations and fees and things like that.
And I've never heard of using private money in the capital stack. Like, why did you guys choose that?
So the private lending in the capital stack, it's basically the same as like a bridge loan. So there are private lenders who raise capital from their outside sources. Yeah, so they raise capital from outside sources, and then they end up investing or lending it to us in the form of debt. And this we got at about, it was just over 9.5%. And then, yeah, the rest was capital that we raised. But you asked about our business plan. So the business plan is, to acquire the asset. Our first phase of value add is going to be operational improvements, as well as some light renovations. So paint touch-ups, cleaning up the garden, because there are 2 massive gardens on the property, which is a major value proposition for us. It's a key differentiator that will allow us to host weddings and things like that. Phase 2 is heavier lift value add. So we're going to do heavier renovations. We're going to do a pretty massive overhaul of the garden to make sure that those outdoor spaces can draw strong communities there, and will make people want to hang out outside. It's also being in Central California wine country. We're going to sell wine. We have a beer and liquor license that we ended up purchasing with the property. And so we're going to do the heavier renovations during the slower season towards the end of the year. And we're projecting to double the value of the asset over the next few years.
Hell yeah, bro. That's sick. But all right, your plan is to manage this remotely, right?
So we are going to do a staff light model. So we will have a general manager who is on the property part-time. So it's not going to be as heavy or fully staffed as a typical hotel. But we are going to do the majority of the management remotely.
Okay. So I see Rich, right? He has some big hotels, and I'm pretty sure that he operates most of those completely remote, right?
That's correct.
How do you do that? Like how?
Yeah, so you look for certain characteristics. Still cutting out. Yeah, so you look for certain characteristics in the asset. So external facing doors is a big one. Anything that makes it really easy for guests to find their room. So we, like, if you have a bed and breakfast model where it's a really old property that they just chopped up the rooms and turned them into individual units for people to stay in, those tend to be really complicated to manage remotely because guests will have a harder time finding their rooms, which means that you're going to have to invest more time in like remote communication and addressing issues. So that's a big one. And the other is you still need like a head of cleaning or somebody who is in charge of making sure that the cleaning gets done in a timely way, that the supplies are properly replenished. So if you're serving coffee and different things like that. But overall, the offering does tend to be much simpler, with a focus on ease for checking in and things like that.
Okay. And do you guys plan on like getting a interior designer, or or is that Jackie? Is Jackie the interior designer?
No, she's not. This is no, for this she did a fantastic job with the fourplex. But we are hiring like all really elite people, which is really exciting. So that's another thing that like is a major realization for this deal and going bigger is easier than staying small. And I'll say that again just to make sure that we really hit this home. Going bigger is easier than staying small. Buying the fourplex and renovating that on a tight budget was significantly harder than buying a 24-unit hotel with a duplex attached to it that we're going to add tremendous value to. And the reason is because when there's a bigger piece of the pie for people to chop up, it's easier to align those incentives and get A players involved, because A players don't want to work for scraps. A players want to get meaty chunks of whatever you're offering. So when I bought that $520,000 fourplex and I was doing the renovations myself and raised a small amount of capital, we had to be scrappy and it was difficult to align incentives. When we bought this 24-unit hotel, and you have to buy it right, you have to make sure that you're delivering value. When we bought this 24-unit hotel, we were able to raise $3 million and take that capital and bring on A players, so hiring fantastic designers, fantastic property managers, fantastic general contractors, because it was a big enough pie that divvying it up made sense for A players. And you can't get that with smaller properties.
You guys raised $3 million.
We raised $3 million.
Dude, that's so dope, man. We raised $3
million because the property made sense. Like, we were able to project an 18% or just under 18% annualized return with a bunch of other benefits like tax benefits, and our investors are going to be able to claim depreciation and all the other benefits that we were talking about earlier on the call. Yeah. So when you can present a deal that makes sense, and also another big angle is 401ks. A lot of people don't know that their 401ks, whether it's with a previous employer, if it's with a previous employer, it's easier. But whether it's with a previous employer or not, there's potential to actually roll that 401k over. And when you look at some of the offerings, like the mutual funds and different things that 401ks currently offer, for most by most custodians that are holding the 401k, it just doesn't make sense compared to an investment like this. Like, you might be hitting 10, maybe 11% if you're in a good mutual fund with your 401k, or you can roll it into a deal like ours and yield an 18% annualized return. And on top of that, you'll get distributions from that, where you can take those distributions and invest them into whatever mutual funds you were going to invest in anyway. So when you run the numbers, investing in a real estate deal like ours, of course, these are projections, but we can actually hit these numbers. And there are loads of cases where people are hitting these numbers, and we're anticipating we're going to hit these numbers also, because like I said, we're bringing on 8 players, which significantly de-risks the deal. These investors can get close to a 22% return on their 401k or self-directed IRA that they're rolling over, as opposed to the 10, 11% return that they would be getting normally. And when you look at those compounding returns over time, the difference between a 22% annualized return and an 11% annualized return is massive. It is huge.
Bro, I love how well you know the market, but man, you speak with so much like passion, man. Like, if I had money, I would have invested in your deal too. Shit. Like, you sold me.
Hey, let's go, man. I'm going to have more. I'll give you a call.
That's sick, man. You guys are killing it. Well, congratulations, man. Like, whoo, you're doing it. You're just doing it. So I love it.
Yeah, man. Well, tell me a bit about your deal. I know you're involved in a hotel conversion.
Yeah, it's completely different. So this was at La Quinta out in Overland Park, Kansas, and we're transitioning to long-term rental. So the original business plan was to include everything, because we've gotten further into the deal, right? Like, that just doesn't work as well anymore. Plus, this is down to the studs or concrete walls, because it has concrete walls. And gosh, man, there's a lot of things that we have misstepped on and a lot of things that we could have done better. What's saving us is the fact that the market has appreciated. Overland Park is just hot, hot, hot. The 1 mile radius income is like 91,000 around the hotel. So there's a lot of money out there. But definitely a huge learning experience. Don't know if I'll ever do it again. I think I really like the boutique hotel angle a little bit better. And it's just massive. It's 143 doors, or keys, as you guys say. 143, dude. It's so much. It's so much. So I wish and you seem to be like a big player. I'm small. I'm on the totem pole. I'm way down here. I'm just along for the ride.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean,
So
you get involved somehow. You have to. And getting involved is the most important step. It's like we were talking about, your first deal is the most important deal. It doesn't matter if you have a sliver of the pie or if you have the whole pie. It's like
I
the fact
claim
that
it.
you get any pie.
I claim it, bro. Like my
Hell
K1 that
yeah.
I got from that property was negative, bro. Like yes. Can't
Yeah,
do
there you
anything with
go.
it, but you know what? It's there. It's waiting. It's waiting.
Yeah.
um,
Well, you
were
will
you?
be. You will be able to do something with it once you convert your current place into a rental property.
That's very true. That is very true. But the thing is, this property is going to cash flow. So I'll tell you, my mortgage payment for this house is about 1,700. When I rent it out, I'm hoping to get 3,500. So, man, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Especially if I can take all
Dude.
that tax free. That would be sick, man.
Yeah.
And that's on a
Yeah.
long term. Like, I want to learn the Airbnb game. I want to learn the boutique hotel game. It's just time. Just time. You guys, are
100%.
you guys still traveling? I think I've seen you guys post some pretty impressive travel vacation pics.
Yeah, we are traveling quite a bit. So right now we live in the San Diego area, and in about 3 months we're heading over to Italy for a couple months.
Oh, for a
So we're
couple
gonna be
months.
hanging out
Holy
over
shit!
there. Yeah, yeah. We haven't decided how long we're gonna be over there. It's actually a funny story because last year we bought a one-way ticket to Italy because we thought we're gonna stay there about a month, but we didn't have our plans fully nailed down yet. So we bought a one-way ticket, and then when we were looking at return flights, the return flights were actually cheaper than the one-ways. So we bought a return flight from like a round trip flight. So the one-way flights were more expensive than the round trip flights from Italy. And so we bought a round trip flight, and we pushed it back as far as we could because we were like buying this hotel and there's a lot going on. So we kicked the can down the road, and now we've kicked it down the road as far as it can go. So we're heading back to Italy, and we have another one-way flight over there. So we're going to be over there about a month. And we might just start the tradition of buying a round trip ticket from Italy every year because it forces us to take that vacation. And I'm such a workhorse. I could literally work nonstop and never take any breaks. And so it's actually kind of nice being forced to get out and go make that trip.
Oh man, I got a 1-year-old, so it's really hard to travel right now. But
Mm.
as soon as he's just a little bit older, where grandmas can come over and take him, me and April, we got to start traveling a little bit more. What is your favorite destination that you've been to?
Oh, that's a good question. That's hard. That's like asking someone what their favorite kid is or which kid's their favorite. I don't know. I don't know.
Listen,
I
if
like
any
different spots for different reasons. What's that?
if anybody tells you that they don't have a favorite kid, they're lying. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I would say Lisbon, Portugal is up there.
Portugal. Okay.
Yeah, that's like one of Europe's best kept secrets, in my opinion, is
Really?
Portugal. Yeah,
Okay.
100%.
Why though? Like, what about
Why?
Portugal?
So they recently joined the EU, or they're one of the more recent additions. They've been in for years, but one of the more recent additions, which gave them a massive line of credit, which they began investing heavily into their tourism. And so I mean, this was actually like a decade ago that I was out there when I was younger. I was fresh out of college. And so like you would go to a hostel, it'd be wildly affordable, but it would be super nice. Everybody was super nice, super clean country, and the culture is super rich. The food is amazing. And in these hostels that were like $20 a night, you would have these like nice MacBooks for the guests to use and different things like that, where it's this really cool vibe of highly affordable, but also really nice. And I just loved it, man. I loved it. I love everything about Portugal.
Lisbon, Portugal. Okay. I'm gonna tell April tonight, like, hey, look,
Yeah, man, book a trip.
we're going to Portugal in about 2 years. So we'll go to Portugal when you know how much baby daycare is? Not to like vent, but
No, no, it's outrageous. Vent, brother.
it
It's
is
outrageous.
sick. My 1-year-old for the year, $17,000.
Whoa.
Is that not the most ridiculous thing you've ever
Yeah, that
heard?
is outrageous.
Yeah, like I cannot wait for pre-K 3, but once we do, like that's a $17,000 vacation built in. That's
Yeah.
not bad. So
Yeah.
so silver lining, right? I think
Yeah,
maybe.
no, there you go, man. Yeah. No, I'm
You
100% with you. Yeah, book that
know,
trip. Let's go.
yeah, that's sick, bro. Well, Lisbon, dope, bro. Well, thank you for sharing that. Wrapping up, man, is there anything else that you'd like to leave the listeners with?
Yeah, I would say just go for it. Just go for it. Like, you don't have to have everything figured out. Just go for it. Just move. Like, taking action is more important than figuring it out. I'll say that again. Taking action is more important than figuring it out. Don't wait for all the lights to turn green before you leave your house. You'll never get anywhere. Outside of that, yeah, people can find me on Instagram at Gideon Spencer _. That's where I post stuff. And that's pretty much the gist of it, man. Yeah,
Oh
reach
yeah,
out.
bro. What should who and why should people reach out to you?
Dude, anybody who's interested in taking massive action should reach out to me, or anybody who is in the process of taking massive action, because I get fueled by people who are doing interesting things or going for interesting things. And so reach out. I would love to connect to anybody who is actually going for something in life, actually taking those big swings.
Oh yeah, bro. I'm gonna have to connect you with a few people that I know that are stepping into the boutique
Yeah, let's
hotel
do it.
space.
Let's do
Do
it.
you know Jackson Campbell and Nico and Streetman?
Nico, is he in San Diego?
Nico is in Hawaii, but
Okay, no.
Rich and team, they all love Nico. Everybody loves Nico, to be honest with you.
Oh,
If you
nice.
know
Yeah, no,
Nico, you
I'd
love.
love to meet him. Yeah.
Yeah. They're dope. Good people. I'm gonna connect you guys because like I said, they're stepping into the space too.
Yeah, let's do it,
Cool,
man. I'd
man.
love to.
Hell yeah, bro. Hey, do me a favor. The last 3 people that I've had, I've actually made them do the outro. Do you mind taking us out?
No, not at all. What's like the typical format?
This is your show now. Let's hear it.
This is my show now. All right, listen to the podcast, follow the people, reach out, do interesting things, and get back to Trey about the interesting things that you've done so that he can have you on the podcast, and then you can take the outro. All right.
Yeah.
We out.
We out of here. Thank you, Gideon. I appreciate you.
Awesome. I appreciate you, brother. It's good connecting again.